All right, 7th graders, I'm going to go over some examples from the practice links for the first standard that we're covering. I have my textbook open. At the bottom, I'm going to click on NS, which brings me to the number system. And I'm going to the first standard, which is NS1A. I'm going to go down to those practice links. So that we can work on some practice problems. Let me get down to it, scroll down to it, over here. There we go. All right, first one is signs of sums. We'll click on that one as soon as my board cooperates. Okay, good. Signs of sums says consider the following number line. What is the sign of B plus A? Okay, so we need to look at this number line to determine the values of A and B. We can see A is positive, and if we count up from 0, we can see that A is going to be a positive 8. If we count down from 0, we can see that B is going to be a negative 8. So we have a positive 8 and we have a negative 8. Now the question says, what is going to be the sign when we add those two together? So if we do 8 plus a negative 8, what's the sign going to be? Well, if I start at a positive 8, actually let's apply our rules. We have a positive and a negative, which if we follow our rules, two unlike signs right next to each other becomes a negative. So that turns into just 8 minus 8, and you probably know 8 minus 8 is 0. But if I use my number line, if I start at a positive 8 and go down 8, I'm going to end up at 0. So what's the sign when we add those? It's going to be 0. Okay, let's try another one. Let me clear that ink for you. Okay. Second one says, what is the sign of 37 plus a negative 37? Again, we're going to apply our rules. A positive and a negative right next to each other turns into, well, it's two unlike signs, so it becomes a negative. So it's going to be 37 minus 37. Then it's pretty obvious that it's going to be 0. 37 minus 37 is 0. Okay. Let's try one more. We have another number line. This time A is negative and B is also negative. So let's approximate. Looks like A is a little bit past negative 2, but for this example, we can estimate it to be negative 2. B is right in the middle of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like it's between negative 8 and negative 9. So it's about negative 8.5. Okay? What is the sign? Again, we're going to apply our rules. It says if we have two like signs in front of the numbers, we should add and keep the original sign. So if we add those together, we get 10.5. The original sign is negative. What's going to be the sign of the answer? It's going to be negative. Put in negative, and we got it. All right, good. Let's go on to the second practice link that we have to do for this standard. Which it doesn't want to let me get to. There we go. Okay, the second one, we are still applying those rules that we went over. We can see we have a positive and a negative right next to each other. That's two unlike signs becomes a negative. So that turns into 7 minus 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. Plug in 2. We got it. Good. Let's try another one. -9 plus 5, another rule. When we have a negative and a positive, that's two unlike signs. We subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So I always subtract biggest number minus smallest number. 9 minus 5 is 4. The sign of the bigger number, well, 9 is a bigger number, the sign is negative, so that becomes a -4. So I plug in -4, and I'm good. All right, let's try one more. We have 7 plus -7. Applying a rule again right here. We have we have a positive and a negative. That's two unlike signs right next to each other. Turns into a negative, so that becomes 7 minus 7. 7 minus 7 is 0. All right, good. Got it. Let's try the next link. The third link down. Subtracting negative numbers. Again, we are still applying our rules. Remember, we have to use the first two rules first that are in our notes, the second two rules second. So the first two rules apply to the signs that are right next to each other between the two numbers. So I have a negative and a negative. That'd be two like signs. I need to combine those into a positive. So that becomes -2 plus 7. Okay, two like signs becomes a positive. Now I have two unlike signs. In front of the 2 is a negative, between the two numbers is a positive, two unlike signs. So the rule says we subtract, so I'll do that on the side, and keep the sign of the bigger number. 7 minus 2 is 5. The bigger number is 7, and that sign is positive, so it's a positive 5. So I enter in a positive 5. And we got it right. Good. Let's try another one. We have -2 minus 3. Now we don't have any signs right next to each other between the two numbers, so the first two rules can't be applied. There's nothing to do there. So we go on to the second two rules. Second two rules, we have a negative in front of the 2, a negative in front of the 3. That makes two like signs. When you have two like signs, you add the two numbers. 2 plus 3 is 5, and you keep the original sign. Original sign is negative, so it's going to be a -5. So I plug in -5. And we got it correct. Let's try one more. All right, this time we do have two signs right next to each other. So the rule says two like signs become a positive. So this turns into 5 plus 2. 5 plus 2, we can all do, which is 7. 5 plus 2 is 7. Okay? Let's clear our ink there. Good. And let's go on to the next one. Same thing, same rules, just that now we have more numbers in a row. Okay? So we want to start off with our first two rules, which means we're looking at the signs that are right next to each other, between the numbers. So we're looking here, we're looking here. Those are the only signs that are right next to each other. So our rule says a positive and a negative, that's two unlike, becomes a negative. So I'll rewrite it as -2 minus 3. The plus 4, there's only one sign there, so it doesn't change at all. Here we have two negatives. That's two like signs become a positive. So the two negatives become a plus 3, and then we have a minus 5. It's only one sign, so it doesn't change at all. Okay? Now we can go through two at a time and apply our second rule. So -2 and -3, there's a negative in front of the 2 and a negative in front of the 3. That's two like signs, which says we add and keep the original sign. So 2 plus 3 is 5. The original sign of both of those is negative, so it becomes -5. And now I'm just going to write the rest of it so that I don't get confused and I don't forget any of it. Then I look at the next two. I have a -5 and a +4. That's two unlike signs. So the rule says we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Subtract, I do 5 minus 4. We always do the bigger number first, minus the smaller number. 5 minus 4 is 1. And then we keep the sign of the larger number. 5 is larger and it's negative, so it becomes a -1. So then I write -1 plus 3 minus 5. I write the rest of it again so I don't forget it and I don't get confused. Now I look at these two. I have a -1 and a +3. So again, they are unlike, which tells me to subtract. So on the side, 3 minus 1 is 2. So I know it's going to be 2. And then I keep the sign of the bigger number. 3 is the bigger number, the sign is positive, so it's a +2. Then I write the rest of it, -5, and apply the rules one more time. The 2 is positive because there's no negative in front of it. The 5 is negative because there's a negative in front of it. So again, I have unlike signs. So that tells me to subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3. Keep the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number in this case is 5, and it's negative because there's a minus right in front of it. My answer is -3. Plug in my answer. -3. And we got it right. Good. Let's try another one of those. Okay. Again, we start with the first two rules. Any signs that are right next to each other, we will simplify using our rules. So here we have a positive and a negative. That's unlike signs. So it's going to become a negative. The 14 is just a negative on its own, so nothing changes there. Here we have two negatives. Two like signs becomes a positive, so it's +22. And then the +14, there's only one sign, so nothing changes. Then I go through two at a time. -9 and -22, two like signs. The rules say you add and keep the original sign. So 22 plus 9 gives me 31. The original sign, they're both negative, so it's -31. Okay, then I write the rest of it so I don't forget anything, so I don't get confused, and then I keep going. Take the next two. Again, they have the same sign, so it tells me, the rule tells me to add and keep the original sign. So 31 and 14 becomes 45. The original signs are negative, so it stays negative. Then I write the rest of it and keep going. Now I have -45 and a +22. Those are unlike signs. A negative and a positive tells me to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So I subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3. 4 minus 2 is 2. It's going to be 23. 45 is the bigger number and it's negative, so it's a -23. And then I write the rest of it and apply the rule one more time. Now I have a negative and a positive, unlike signs again, so I subtract and and keep the sign of the larger number. 23 minus 14, I'm going to have to borrow. 13 minus 4 is 9, so that becomes 9. 1 minus 1 is 0, so it's just 9. And keep the sign of the bigger number. 23 is the bigger number, it's negative, so I put a negative in front, and it's negative 9. Becomes negative 9. And we got it right. Okay? Same rules, it's just that there's more steps. More numbers, so more steps. And it's really important that you keep these problems organized and neat as you go through them so that you can follow your work and so that you don't get confused. It'll help make things easier. Okay? And then our last link is find the missing value. Okay, so we're still applying the same rules, just that our problems look a little bit different. Okay, it says -2 equals something plus 6. Okay, for these, I would draw a number line. We're at -2, and we want to end up at 6. Okay? So, if I go from 6 to -2, I'm going to the left, how many? Well, from 6 to 0 is 6. From 0 to -2 is 2. So I went 6, and then I went 2 more, which is a total of 8. And I went 8 to the left. To the left is in the negative direction, so that would be a -8. Okay, so let's check. I think it's -8. So let's check and see if that works. -8 plus 6. I have unlike signs, so the rule says subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. 8 minus 6 is 2. The sign of the bigger number, 8 is the bigger number, the sign is negative, gives me -2. Okay, and that matched what it needed to equal. So I know that my blank is -8. Okay, and we got it right, as we can see. Good, let's try another one. Okay, this time we have -8 minus something equals 2. Let's draw a number line again. We want to end up at 2. We're starting at -8. So from -8 to 2, how far is that? Well, from -8 to 0 is 8. From 0 to 2 is 2. That together is 10. So I moved 10 from -8 all the way to 2. Okay, now I went in the positive direction. I went to the right, which is the positive direction. So that means from -8, I need to be adding 10. So I need a positive 10 in there. But this minus in front of the 10 kind of messes things up. What that's saying is -8 minus 10 equals 2. But if I apply my rules, I have like signs, which means I need to add and keep the original sign. Well, 10 plus 8 is 18. The original sign is negative. That would give me a -18. That's not what I need. I need a 2. Okay, so I need to change this so it's actually going in the positive direction. And how do I change that? I change that by adding a negative right there. Because now 2 negatives right next to each other makes a positive. So -8, now that becomes plus 10 equals 2. Now if I apply my rules, I have unlike signs, so I subtract 10 minus 8 is 2. And keep the sign of the bigger number. The bigger number is 10. The sign is positive. So it gives me a 2, which is exactly what I needed.